when Emmy and I first started our life together. I thought I had found my soulmate. She was beautiful, smiling, and always knew what to say to cheer me up. We met by chance in a supermarket. I hit her cart with mine, apologized, and she just laughed. Then we talked for a long time in the checkout line, and before we said goodbye, I asked if I could buy her a coffee. That's how our story began. We lived modestly but happily. We had a small apartment in the suburbs, an old car, and a lot of dreams. I worked as a mechanic and Emmy was a hairdresser. We didn't bathe in luxury, but we had enough money to live on, to go to the ocean on weekends, and even sometimes to dine out. I loved her. I really did. She was all I had. But then something started to change. At first, it was small things. She started coming home from work later, spending more time with her friends. She often complained that she was tired, that she wanted a different life. Tom, are we going to live like this, counting every cent? She asked one evening when we were having dinner. We don't have a bad life. I tried to reassure her. We have a roof over our heads. We have each other. Oh, what if that's not enough for me? That was the first thing that alerted me. Emmy began to change. She no longer enjoyed our usual entertainment. She began to admire the luxurious life, browsed blogs of rich people, sighed when she saw expensive cars. And then he appeared. His name was Richard. He owned several hotels, was rich and confident. He came to the salon where Amy worked and got his hair cut only by her. And it seems that there was something between them from the very beginning. I didn't want to believe it. I closed my eyes when she came home with expensive perfume she couldn't afford. When her phone started ringing late at night and she left the room to answer it. But you can't run away from the truth. The night everything became obvious, I came home early. Emmy was in the kitchen, nervously talking on the phone. I can't now. Yes, I want to see you too. Tomorrow. I froze in the doorway. Who was that? She flinched. A friend. You're lying. She closed her eyes and then spoke softly. Tom, we need to talk. Those words were the beginning of the end. I didn't believe in love at first sight. It all seemed like something out of a movie until I met Amy. It was an ordinary day. I was standing in the supermarket picking out tomatoes when I felt something hit me hard in the side. I looked around and there was a girl standing in front of me with a huge shopping cart, smiling guiltily. I'm sorry, she said, picking up the apples that had fallen out of her bag from the floor. It's okay, I replied, helping her pick up the fruit. Her eyes were so bright that I forgot for a moment why I had come to the store. Are you okay? She asked, noticing how I froze. Yes. It's just that it's not every day that I get swept off my feet by such beautiful girls. She laughed. This laugh, light and sincere, touched me deeper than I could have imagined. I didn't know what to say next, but I didn't want to leave. So when we got to the cash register, I gathered my courage and asked Ed, what if I offer you a coffee? She thought for a second and then nodded. That's how it all started. A year later, we were married. The wedding was small but warm. We rented a hall in a cafe and invited only our closest friends and relatives. There was no luxury, but there was real happiness. We lived in an apartment I had rented before I met Emma. It was small but cozy. At first, everything was great. We cooked dinner together, went to the movies, and laughed at silly things. I worked as a mechanic in a car service, and Emmy was a hairdresser. We had enough to live on, even though we couldn't afford luxury travel or expensive purchases. The main thing was that we had each other. Or at least that's how it seemed to me. At first, they were barely noticeable. Emmy started going out with her friends more often, staying late after work. She wasn't interested in our evenings at home anymore, and the old traditions began to irritate her. Tom, aren't you bored? She asked one night at dinner. What do you mean? Or we live like old people. Work, home, dinner, TV. Day in and day out. What's wrong with that? She didn't answer, just sighed. I didn't think much of it, but it was the first wake-up call. Over time, Emmy started changing her style of dress, wearing things that were clearly more expensive than our budget. I asked her where she got the money from, but she just brushed it off. Don't worry. It's a gift. From whom? From the clients. Do your clients give you expensive dresses? She laughed. Some men leave generous tips. It's not my fault they want to make me feel good. It alarmed me, but I brushed it off again. I'm an idiot. It all started with the little things. The phone she hid from me, late calls, unexpected business trips that had never happened before. For a long time I convinced myself that everything was fine. That it was just my imagination, my jealousy. But the truth, as they say, always comes to the surface. One night, when Emmy fell asleep, I heard her phone vibrating. Message after message. She always kept it under her pillow, but this time it fell out. I picked it up. The screen showed a name, Richard. I slid my finger across the screen and saw a series of messages. I can't live without you, baby. When are you going to tell him? I miss you. Tomorrow at 9 at the restaurant. I broke out in a cold sweat. I slowly raised my head and looked at her. She was sleeping as if nothing had happened. The next morning I waited for her to wake up. When she opened her eyes, I was already sitting in the chair, holding her phone in my hands. Who is Richard? I sounded calm, but my heart was on fire. She was confused at first, then quickly took a defensive stance. Oh, it's just a client, she replied, looking away. A client? The one who calls you, baby, and misses you? She sighed and rubbed her face. Tom, I wanted to tell you. I didn't know how, so tell me. She looked me straight in the eye and said something that made the ground shake. I fell in love with him. I don't remember how that conversation went. I only remember that her words hurt more than any blow. She packed her things in one day. She threw the keys on the kitchen table. I don't want to lie to you. He can give me more than you can. He is rich, successful, and knows how to live a beautiful life. And me? I asked. Tom, I can't count pennies all my life. I did not stop her. I didn't beg, I didn't convince. And I just stood there and watched the woman who had been my life yesterday leave for another man. A few weeks later, I received divorce papers. I signed them without a word. When the door closed behind Emma, there was silence. Not the kind that gives you peace, but the kind that presses on your chest, not allowing you to breathe. I was left alone. The house where her laughter had been heard yesterday now seemed empty and alien. And every single thing reminded me of her cup in the kitchen, her favorite blanket on the couch, even the perfume that was still in the air. For the first few weeks, I did not leave the house. I didn't eat or sleep. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, asking myself, why? She said I wasn't good enough for her. Not rich enough. Not successful enough. I tried to be a good husband. I worked so that we had everything we needed. But, apparently, it was not enough. Money. Everything always comes down to money. When I ran out of savings, it became even harder. I didn't pay the bills, so the electricity was cut off. I had to sell my car. Even then, TV, laptop, even my wedding ring, which I kept as a reminder. I found myself at the bottom. One evening I was sitting in a dark room with a bottle of cheap whiskey. My phone had long been turned off, because I didn't even have money to pay the bill. And suddenly there was a knock on the door. I opened the door. Jack, my old friend, was standing in front of me. Damn it, Tom, what happened to you? He looked at me, and something like pity appeared in his eyes. Nothing. I grumbled, returning to my dark corner. He did not leave. He sat down opposite me, opened his pack of cigarettes, and lit one. I didn't come here for that. You can sit here and die slowly, or you can get off your ass and start doing something. Like what? Like start over. Jack offered me a job, and it was nothing special, unloading cars at his small company. It wasn't what I was used to, but I had no choice. The first days were hell. I was not used to physical labor, but every day it got easier. And there was something else I didn't expect. The feeling that I was alive. All day in motion, then a hot shower, dinner, and sleep without nightmares. Gradually, I started to come to my senses. I no longer thought about Emma every night. I even started to laugh. A few months later, I saved up some money and moved into a new apartment. It was small, but it was my own. I went back to training, signed up for courses. Life started to get better. But fate would not be fate if it did not prepare a new surprise for me. Because one evening, when I was walking home calmly, I heard a voice that I couldn't help but recognize. A voice I thought I would never hear again. A Tom. I turned around and there she was. Well, here's where the story gets really interesting. Stay tuned to find out what happens next. Life never follows a straight line. When it seems that everything is over, it makes a sharp turn and gives you a new chance. You just have to not be afraid to take it. I continued to work for Jack. I unloaded cars, carried boxes, did whatever was needed. It wasn't the job I dreamed of, but it gave me a roof over my head and money to live on. One day Jack came up to me. Tom, have you thought about doing something else? I like what? I have a friend in the business. He's looking for someone he can trust. The work is not hard, but you need intelligence and endurance. And what kind of work is it? Helping with sales, deliveries, contracts, deals. Jack, I don't know anything about this. And I know you're a quick study. I've been thinking, returning to the office world after everything that happened. It was scary, but it was even scarier to stay where I was. The next day, Jack introduced me to Frank, a man in an expensive suit who looked like he knew everything about money. Asa, Tom. He began looking at me carefully. Jack says you're reliable, try to be. That's good. Reliable people are always needed. The job turned out to be more interesting than I expected. Frank was engaged in the supply of equipment for small businesses. My task was simply to find clients, help with paperwork, and solve minor problems. Every day I realized that I liked it. I no longer felt like a failure. At one of the business events, I met Lucy. She was a smart, confident woman who knew exactly what she wanted. So what brought you into this business world, Tom? She asked with a smile. It's a long story. All the most interesting stories are like that. We talked all evening. I didn't think about Amy. I didn't think about the past. It was the first time in a long time that I was just enjoying the moment. Not everything was smooth sailing. One day, one of our customers didn't pay for a delivery. Frank was angry. Jack was nervous. Tom, this is your client. Deal with it, Frank said. What if he just doesn't have the money? That's not our problem. I realized that business is a cruel world. But I didn't want to be the one to put pressure on people who were already in trouble. I met with this client. He was an old man, the owner of a small coffee shop. I'll pay you. Just give me some time, he said. I went to Frank and said we could give him an extension. Frank was angry at first, but then agreed. 2 months later, the man paid us back and his coffee shop was thriving. And I realized that business is not just about money. It's about people. I was earning more money than ever. I rented a better apartment, updated my wardrobe, even bought a car. But most importantly, I felt different. I was no longer that broken man who had been abandoned by his wife. I started a new path. And that's when fate decided to play its game with me again. Because one evening, when I was leaving a restaurant after a business meeting, I saw her. Emmy, she was standing by the road, alone, and she didn't seem... Well, now I was wondering what she wanted. And you. I thought I had left everything in the past. That I would never see her face again, hear her voice, or feel the bitterness that ate me up inside after her betrayal. But life plays cruel jokes. It's evening. The cold wind from the ocean penetrates my coat, making its way to my bones. I left the restaurant after a business meeting, thinking only of a hot shower and a soft bed. And then I saw her. Emmy. She stood on the side of the road, wrapped in a thin coat that was clearly not for this weather. Her hair was tangled, her face was haggard, and her eyes had the same familiar blue flame, but now with a touch of fear. She saw me and froze. And Tom. I didn't answer, I just stared. A few seconds passed, maybe an eternity, and then she took a step forward. Please, I need to talk to you. We got into my car. And I started the engine, turned on the heating, and waited in silence for her to speak. I know you must hate me. Her voice was trembling. Hate? I smiled bitterly. No. I stopped wasting any emotions on you a long time ago. She sighed and lowered her head. I have nothing left, Tom. I can see that. I made a mistake. I laughed. She flinched. Made a mistake. No, Emmy, you made a choice. And it wasn't me. And it turned out that her rich husband, the one she left me for, wasn't so perfect after all. He had money, he had connections. But he also had another life, other women, other plans. I was just another toy for him. I kept quiet. He left me when he found someone younger. He just kicked me out of the house. No money, no nothing. And now do you know what it's like to be left with nothing? She nodded. I didn't feel any pity. So why are you here? I finally asked. Or because you're the only one I've ever really loved. I laughed sharply. I loved. Just like that, just remembered after all these years. I made a mistake, Tom. I was blind. I thought money would make me happy. And did it? No, I looked at her. She had once been the most beautiful woman I'd ever known. Now there was a stranger sitting in front of me. Tired, confused, scared? Help me, Tom. Please, I've been waiting for this. How exactly? I'm not asking for much. Just let me stay with you for a while. Until I get a job, until I get back on my feet. I leaned back in the seat and closed my eyes. This was it. The test. Am I ready to forgive? Do I want to let her back into my life? She was sitting next to me, hunched over, as if she was afraid I would kick her out right then and there. And I really could have done that. I could have just driven her to the train station and left, closing this chapter forever. But instead, I said, okay, Emmy, let's go. Her eyes filled with tears, and I looked forward, realizing that my game was just beginning. And I knew this moment would come. She came back for a reason. There was a reason she asked to spend the night. I could see it in her eyes, a story of pain, betrayal, fear. But did I really want to hear it? We were sitting in the kitchen. Ashley was holding a cup of hot coffee, but her hands were shaking. She had a tired expression, dark circles under her eyes. The woman I saw in front of me was not the one I remembered. Tom, I know you don't have to listen to me, but I want to tell you everything. I shrugged my shoulders. You have 900 words. She smiled sadly and began. When I left you, I thought I was lucky. Howard. He was rich, influential, strong. I felt as if I had won the jackpot. I listened in silence. At first, everything was perfect. Luxurious travel, expensive gifts, entertainment. I looked at you and thought, well, you're going to be working your whole life, and I'm already here at the top. She took a sip of her coffee, as if it would help her drown out the bitter taste of her own words. But then everything changed. Howard never loved me, Tom. He owned me. I felt my fists clench on their own. At first, it was just little things. Don't wear this. Don't meet these people. Don't go out without my permission. And then he just stopped letting me out. She looked at me, waiting for a reaction. But I was in no hurry to give it. I was living in a cage, in a luxurious mansion where there was everything but freedom. And then I learned about other women. Younger women, more beautiful, he didn't even hide it. And what did you do? At first I tolerated. I thought I could somehow change it. And then I realized that I was just an element of the interior for him. A pretty picture that will soon lose its value. I noticed tears appearing in her eyes. One day he just said, pack your things. Just like that. He was even worse. He called security and they just threw me out of the gate. She shook her head. No money, no place to live, no friends because all my friends turned out to be his acquaintances. I was silent. I didn't know what to do. You don't know what it's like to have everything and then overnight you become nothing. I smiled. I know exactly how it feels. She looked down. I tried to get back to my normal life. But No one wanted to deal with the woman Howard had left. All the doors were slammed in my face. Oh, you could have gotten a job. I thought about it. But who would hire a millionaire's ex-wife with no skills? I smiled bitterly. And that's when you remembered me. She covered her face with her hands. I'm not asking you to forgive me, Tom. I know what I did. I looked at her, not knowing what I was feeling. I used to love this woman. I would have given anything for her. And now she was sitting in front of me, broken, destroyed by her own choices. I didn't know where else to go. The silence dragged on. I could have told her that she got what she deserved, that it was just. But I didn't say anything. Because in her eyes I saw myself the person I was when she left me. I got up and went to the window. I thought that maybe life was giving me a chance. But not for her. It was for me. Stay for a while, I said, not turning around. Tom, but don't think that everything will be the same. She nodded silently. I didn't know why I was doing this. Or I did, but I didn't want to admit it. I didn't sleep all night. She lay in the next room, wrapped in my old blanket that I had once bought in a sale for a penny. She used to sleep on silk sheets, in rooms bigger than my entire apartment. And now it's here. But what should I do with it? I looked at the ceiling and thought. I used to imagine this moment. How she would come back broken, destroyed by her own greed. How I would stand in front of her, look into her crying eyes and say, now go. I could have done it. I had to do it. But something was bothering me. She betrayed me. She threw me away like an old thing when she found something new. She took everything she could, leaving me with nothing. I remember the night she left. Tom, I love you, but we're on different paths, different roads. My road led to a cheap motel where I slept on a squashed mattress. Hers led to a luxurious mansion with a swimming pool. But what happened then? Her path turned out to be a dead end. And I, step by step, got out. I closed my eyes. This could be a chance. But for whom? Or for me? Part of me wanted to make her feel everything I had been through. To make her live in the same filth I'd been surviving in for months. But another part of me. The other part was remembering all those years when she was my wife. And when we laughed, when we made plans, when I sincerely thought she was mine forever. This part wanted to help her, and it pissed me off. I got up, made myself some coffee, and sat down in the kitchen. A minute later she came out, tired, disheveled, wearing my old t-shirt. Did you sleep well? My voice sounded harsher than I intended. She nodded. Tom, don't. I interrupted her. I haven't decided what to do with you yet. She looked down. I know you haven't. I looked at her and couldn't figure out if she was really sorry or just trying to survive. I could have done anything to her. I could have thrown her out the door. I could have forced her to work for me. And I could have destroyed her morally the way she had destroyed me. But then what? Would it make me feel better? I felt a struggle unfolding inside me. She was waiting for my decision. And I knew that whatever decision I made would change everything. I took a sip of coffee. You're staying. She breathed a sigh of relief. But don't think I've forgotten. She nodded. I didn't know where this would lead. But it was a test, and I had to pass it. I looked at her. She was sitting across from me, holding the cup of coffee I had placed in front of her. Her hands were shaking, and her eyes were swollen with tears, and her shoulders were hunched, as if the weight of the past had pinned her to the ground. She had come back because she had nowhere else to go. And now it was up to me. And a moment of my mind told me that I had to send her away. She deserved it. She left when I was at my worst. She betrayed me, she left me. And not just that, she chose money. Another man, another life. But my soul, tis part of me that still remembered her laugh, her hugs, those happy years we spent together. It couldn't just be erased. I closed my eyes. Tom. Her voice was soft, almost broken. I know I have no right to ask, but I raised my hand to silence her. Why did you come back to me? She flinched. Because you're the only one who knew the real me. Before all of this. Before I made the biggest mistake of my life. I gave her a crooked smile. You made a choice. What made you think it was the right one? She sighed. Because I was stupid. Greedy. I believed that love was comfort, not something more. I thought money would solve everything. I felt a storm raging inside me, and I could have kicked her out right then and there. I could have said that I was not interested in her repentance. But what would this revenge give me? I lived these years without her. Why, I learned to breathe again, to work again, to believe in myself again. Was there any point in holding on to the past? She is not the woman who left me. She is tired, broken, and exhausted by life. And I am not the man she left behind. When I don't need her recognition anymore, I didn't need her apology. I already knew who I was. I got up, walked to the window, and looked outside. Everything there was the same as always. Life went on. I went back to her. I can't forget. Oh, she nodded, clutching her cup. But I can forgive. She looked at me, her eyes filled with hope. What does this mean? I sighed. It means that I don't hold a grudge against you. But it doesn't mean that everything will be like before. Her lips trembled as if she was fighting back tears. I'm ready to accept this. Anna, I looked at her for a few more seconds and then said, you have time to find a job and get back on your feet. But nothing will happen between us. The past is not coming back. She lowered her head. Oh, thank you. And I didn't know if I was doing the right thing. But it was my decision, and I accepted it. I sat in my apartment, looking out the window. Night was swallowing the city, neon lights reflected in the wet asphalt, and somewhere in the distance a siren cut through the silence. She was sleeping in the next room. I let her stay. Not because I loved her. Not because I wanted to return something. It was just the right thing to do. Have I changed? Have I become stronger? Or did I just take her back because deep down I was still the fool she had left? I looked at my phone. Oh, and a name appeared on the display, Marta. A woman I had started dating a few months ago. She was good, kind. She loved me for who I was without trying to change me. But now, I didn't know what to say to her. I didn't know what to tell myself. Why did I let the past come back? Was I really ready for it? I ran my hand over my face, feeling tired. If she hadn't come back, what would have happened next? Would I have married Marta, or forget about everything that happened? Or will this life always find a way to confront us with what we are running away from? I heard someone sigh in the next room. It was her. What did I feel? I didn't know. Pity. Rage. Or maybe a hidden joy that life had returned the favor. I picked up the phone and turned it off. Not now. Not today. I didn't know what would happen next. But one thing was for sure, this was not over. I stood by the window holding a cup of coffee. The morning was quiet, calm, as if nothing had happened. As if yesterday hadn't turned everything upside down. She was sitting at the kitchen table, wrapped in my old shirt. She was drinking tea, looking at the wall. We had nothing to talk about. Or maybe there was, but neither of us dared to start. What should I do with her? Have I forgiven her? Do I want her to stay? Would I be able to trust her again? I remembered everything, how she left, how I was left with nothing, how I was climbing out of the bottom I hid after her betrayal. And now she was here again. The same woman, but not the same woman. She's lost everything. Him, her money, her house, her brilliance. Now I was not looking at the haughty beauty who had once turned her back on me. She was just an ordinary woman, tired, vulnerable. I'm scared. I don't expect you to forgive me, she said quietly, as if she had caught my thoughts. I didn't say anything. I don't know where to go. Her voice broke. I have nowhere to go. I closed my eyes. I could have kicked her out. I could have said, I don't care. I had the right to do that. But was that what I really wanted? Something inside me said, give her a chance. Something else was screaming, she'll cheat again. Huh? I drank my coffee, feeling the warmth spread through my body. You can stay? I finally said. She flinched. But she looked up at me. But I don't know what will happen next. Her eyes were filled with pain. that we did not throw ourselves into each other's arms. There were no tears, no loud words, no promises that everything will be like before, because it won't. The past cannot be returned. I hope you find this story interesting. Hey, your feedback and subscription are always welcome.